This is the Moza Nano SE. It's a single axis, extendable selfie gimbal. Moza sent me this gimbal free of charge for the purposes of this review, but this video is not sponsored. If you're not familiar with Moza, they make a bunch of gimbals for both phones and full-size cameras, as well as some interesting sliding monopods. The Moza Nano SE weighs 250 grams, so it's pretty light. It's got a battery life of up to 10 hours and it takes around 2.5 hours to charge. That battery is built in and non-removable, so when it dies, it dies. The maximum payload capacity of the gimbal is 280 grams, meaning it should be alright for most of the larger phones. Speaking of which, it can take a maximum of 90mm wide when it comes to devices, which means if you've got the biggest phone with a chunky case on, it will make it a little bit tight. So just make sure that you check it will fit in the gimbal before you get one. The motor itself has a range of 270 degrees and the gimbal is available in two colours. This is the black one. They also do a green one, which looks a little bit like that. Unlike most phone gimbals, this one only has a single motor, hence it being a single axis gimbal. This is the motor here, and it only controls the roll. Normally you get pan, which is kind of this direction, you would get tilt, which is kind of this direction, and you would get roll, which is what this one is actually controlling now. There are a couple of benefits of this being a single axis gimbal only. Number one being the price. The fact that there's only one motor versus 3 motors on other gimbals means that the cost of this gimbal is far lower than those other 3-axis gimbals. This gimbal only costs $45. The second benefit of this gimbal only having the one motor is you will never get that motor in the shot, no matter how wide your lens is. Sometimes in the 3-axis gimbals, depending on the direction that you hold it, you can sometimes get that tilt motor in the shot, especially if you're using a wide angle lens or an aftermarket lens like one from Moment. Pretty much all gimbals have a selfie mode, and most of them now automatically rotate to do portrait mode. And this one is no different. But what makes this one special is that you can do this. You can extend this gimbal up to 690mm or 27 inches. It also has this rather nifty hinge feature, so depending on the angle you want to get, you can adjust that, and therefore you can make your selfie mode even better. The handle of the gimbal has a non-removable tripod base. When it's closed, it's held in place with magnets. When you open out the tripod, you will need to extend the arm a little bit in order for it to sit flat on a table. Also in the handle of the gimbal you get this. This is a removable Bluetooth remote. This allows you to control not only the Moza Genie app, more on that in a second, but also the native camera app. Moza say this remote has up to a 10-meter range and lasts for about 100,000 operations, which means that it does have a battery in it, but you can't replace it. So I guess once it runs out, you just toss it out. I'm gonna go and get that. The remote's going to let you do all that usual kind of stuff, like flip between the front and the back camera, start and stop recording, and zoom in and zoom out. Obviously this is only going to be a digital zoom on most cameras. The other thing you can do with it is switch between the follow and lock mode. So right now I'm in the locked mode, and if I double click the mode button, I should now be in the follow mode, which you can see it moves around a bit smoother. As you move the gimbal, it will follow your movements smoothly. If you double tap that mode button again, you get the lock mode, and then you can see it keeps the phone level. Back into follow mode, you can see it's drifting around. Double tap again, and I'm in that lock mode. So they're the only two modes you're going to get on this gimbal. You're not going to get pan follow or tilt follow or any of those other modes, because it's only that single axis. The overall size of the Nano SE is pretty small, especially when you fold it in half. It's going to fit easily into something like a Moment sling bag, but I'm not sure you'd want to put it in your pocket. I mean, it does fit, but you're not going to want that bulge in your pocket all day. Setup and control of the gimbal is done via the Moza Genie app, and you're not even going to be able to use the gimbal until you've downloaded and registered the device in the app. I wish you didn't have to do this, but to be honest, it's pretty standard these days for most things that you buy. The app allows you to shoot video, photo, time-lapse and slow motion, and it's actually packed with quite a lot of features. In the video mode, you can choose between 720, 1080 and 4K resolutions up to a maximum frame rate of 240 frames per second. This obviously depends on the quality. I think the 240 is only available in the 720 mode, but you can get up to 60 in 4K. I'm shooting on the iPhone 12 mini, so it's probably related to the capability of that phone. If you're using an older device or an Android device, then you probably get different settings, so it may vary. The app also has a Pro mode, giving you full manual control over the camera settings. You've got the option to switch between the lenses, both front and back, as well as multiple lenses on the back camera. Other interesting features in the app include gesture control, meaning you can start and stop recording using certain gestures that are pre-built into the app. There are also 3 different levels of anti-shake, grids, spirit levels, silent recording mode. There's also a bunch of filters built in, like beauty mode or film emulations, if that's your kind of thing. If you want to get really creative and you're not really sure how to start, then there are some inbuilt templates that allow you to get some shots based on some different camera transitions that will be automatically controlled by the gimbal. You can then put together some pretty fun little edits which will include music. When it comes to getting stable footage, the Nano's only really going to help you with that roll axis, keeping your phone level. So it's not going to be quite as stable as a 3-axis gimbal would be. I took the Nano out to get some sample footage with my iPhone 12 mini, and here it is. As you can see, the gimbal isn't going to completely remove all movement in your footage, but it does help you get a fairly stable shot. There are a few missing features compared to its 3-axis counterparts, one of which being motion time-lapse. Ordinarily, when you have a 3-axis gimbal, you're able to set it down somewhere, choose a starting point and an end point, and the gimbal will take care of the rest, giving you a beautiful motion time lapse. The Nano, however, whilst having a time lapse feature, is only static. The only thing it would be able to do is like a rolling shot, and it doesn't give you that option. So you're stuck with static time lapses from this, I'm afraid. The same thing applies to panoramas. You're not going to get those 3 or 9-shot panoramas you get from some 3-axis gimbals because, again, the gimbal can't move itself from point A to point B, so it's not going to be able to get all of those individual photos that are then stitched together to get you that panorama. And finally, again, for the same reasons, you're not going to be able to do motion tracking. If you want those extra features, they really are only available in more expensive gimbals that are 3-axis based. One slight frustration I've had with the Nano is getting an absolute level shot. Occasionally, when I've been using it, it's looked 1 or 2 degrees off, so I decided to test that theory. Using both the level built into the iPhone as well as one of these spirit levels that come on a tripod plate, I was able to determine that it's quite critical the position of the phone in the clamp, because whilst the gimbal might be keeping things level, it could be slightly off just by the grasp of the clamp. So that's something to look out for. One thing that would be nice is to be able to slightly adjust the motor just to compensate for any issues that you might be having like that. In a word, no. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. You can if you're prepared to make some ridiculous contraption where you can counterweight the lens, but I wouldn't say it's particularly recommended. And I think it probably would put your phone over the weight that the gimbal is designed to handle. But if you really want to jerry rig something, it is possible. But again, I would say no, not really. Don't expect the Moza Nano SE to compete with more expensive 3-axis gimbals. In fact, it's better thought of as kind of a selfie stick first and then a gimbal second. If you've been thinking about getting a selfie stick tripod combo to use with your phone, then this is definitely worth considering. If you compare it to something like the Joby Grip-Tight Pro Telepod, then it stacks up pretty well. Okay, so you don't get the cold shoe on top of the phone and you are restricted to a 90-degree angle from the tripod base when you're tilting the device backwards. But you do get that added benefit of the gimbal to help keep things level. They both have a built-in tripod and they both have removable Bluetooth remotes. And the extension range of the selfie stick is reasonably similar. The Telepod does take a fair bit more weight than the Nano, and that's because it's designed to be used also with small mirrorless cameras and action cameras. In fact, it can take up to 1 kilogram, where the Nano, as I said before, can only take up to 280 grams. So there's a fair difference there. But if you purely compared them for mobile shooting, the Nano looks pretty good value for money. The Telepod costs £95 here in the UK and just shy of $100 in the US direct from Joby's website. You can get a better deal on Amazon where you'll pay closer to $55 in the US and about £75 in the UK. But compare that to the $45 of the Nano SE, it seems like it might be a bit of a no-brainer. I should say that I personally haven't tested the Telepod and I'm not saying it's a bad product. I just thought it was an interesting comparison to the Nano SE because I feel like that's much closer to a selfie stick than it is a 3-axis gimbal. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.